It's dragon's blood, which I don't know what color dragon's blood actually is, but this one's red.
Oh, stick your nose in there.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Honey and berry.
Back in the day, we made a mead that we called Dragon Blood. And today, we're going to give it another go with Dragon Blood Mead 2.0.
That actually kind of rhymed.
It did.
That was good.
Thanks.
That was good.
Thanks.
If you don't know what Dragon Blood Mead is, we didn't actually invent it. A lot of people have made it. It's actually a triple berry mead. So we got triple berry frozen berries at the store, and they're still in the freezer because we don't need them yet. Oh no, we don't. We have learned a lot since we made this first one. And one thing that we've learned is that you do need a little bit of yeast nutrition, and it's probably best to break things into sections. So more on that later. But first, let's start hydrating our yeast. And for that, oh, wait a minute. What yeast are we using?
We're using the Beast.
Lalvin 71B.
Yes. Lalvin 71B in our environment works really, really well. We're in like 72 to 76 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're much lower than that, I suggest D47. They're not the same, but they're almost counterparts in that way. Like if you're in the mid 60s, D47 is going to work almost as well for you as 71B does for us. And I'm just going to eyeball roughly half a packet. The hydration is not necessary, but I will tell you a little story about what we're going to do here. Just 3 days ago, someone said when they saw that I had the self-stirring cups back again, it's just a magic bullet cup, but it has ridges inside, so you can mix it up really easy. But anyway, someone saw that we had them because I made a post about it, and they said, oh, does that mean you're going to start using GoFirm? And I went, probably not, because we haven't seen a reason for it. And then I thought about it, and I went, let me check this stuff out. Turns out, I actually would prefer to use GoFirm than even Fermento. It's just nutrients for the yeast, but it's all natural. It's basically just vitamins and minerals, helps the yeast build a strong colony right from the start, kind of buffers the cells up before they go into the must. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's give it a shot. So
we're
here's
gonna add some
look at this,
water.
brand new package.
We're going to add some water to this first.
So I ordered some right away, and then I told him, I said, you know what? I ordered some. We'll try it out. Now, again, optional. If you don't want to use it, don't. I'm just checking to see how it does. Now, it says a heaping 1/4 teaspoon. It also says a tablespoon of water. I don't think that's enough water to hydrate in, so we used a little bit more. I would call that a heaping 1/4 teaspoon. And I don't have to mix it with that spoon because I have a self-stirring cup. By the way, we have links to all the stuff that we use, so if you want yours, they come in twos. It's like $10 or something like that, but it works great. I have 2 of them now. And you're supposed to let that sit for 20 minutes. We'll see if we get a full 20 minutes on it, but we're gonna try. All right, now we need a fermenter.
And a scale.
Okay, so Durga said we need a scale. Well,
I was wrong.
yeah, not today. We're not gonna use a scale. We got this honey from North Mountain Supply that came in a 3-pound container. So
We need 3 pounds of honey today, so we don't need to weigh it. It's already been weighed for us.
So it's not that you were wrong. It's just that we don't need one today. That's all. Because we normally weigh it out, and I recommend weighing it if you don't have exactly 3 pounds. But we have 3 pounds, and 3 pounds is what I wanted to use. Now you might be wondering, why am I using 3 pounds? For reasons that I will explain. A pound of honey is roughly 0.035 specific gravity in a gallon of must. So 3 pounds would be about 1.105, which is going to be somewhere in the 13 or 14% ABV range, which is pretty good. But then we're going to end up diluting this a little bit later on. So it's going to be a little bit less than that. So I wanted to start just a touch on the high side so that when we dilute it, it still ends up, I don't know, 9, 12%, something like that. I'm not going to be too picky about the actual ABV. Yes, you can use a funnel. Did I just go down the outside? Nope. Oh, it's on the inside. I hit the side, but it went on the inside. Cool. And at a certain point, you just got to say, you know what? I'm going to mix it up with water and make life a lot easier on myself. Now is that point. And this water is blood temperature because room temperature can vary. But if your blood temperature varies by more than a degree or 2, go see a doctor. I don't know how well these caps hold, so I'm going to be careful. And hold it in front of Derek. I'm just kidding. Oh, that's pretty good. Just trying to get it all off the sides. I mean, it's your honey. You paid for it. You should get to use all of it, right? One thing I'd like to point out is that every piece of gear you see here was sanitized in
The red bucket of sanitization!
which is literally just a 15-gallon red bucket off the side that has star sand and water mixed to the manufacturer's suggestion. And we put the stuff in there, we dunk it, it sits for, what was it, 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, and then it is sanitized. Sanitization is important because that way it prevents possible infections. Now, if you don't sanitize, does that guarantee that you're gonna get an infection? No, of course not. Just like sanitizing doesn't guarantee that you won't. But it's always a good idea to try. It's kind of like insurance, you know? You don't need it until you need it. But anyway, we now have that in there. I think we need more water.
I think we do.
All in all, we're going to use about 96 ounces of water for this because 3 pounds of honey is roughly a quart. It's actually about 33 ounces. So that means in a gallon, it'd be 1/4 of the full gallon, see? Also, for those of you that like to work with ratios instead of pounds, it's about a 1-to-3 ratio of honey to water for this particular one. Okay, I also have a solid rubber bung. I call it the thumb saver bung because most bungs have like a hole, and if you press that for a while, it can it doesn't really hurt. It's just a joke. But that lets me mix this up. We don't have the caps for our fermenters anymore. We lost those a long time ago, and they leaked anyway. Now, why do we mix, Erica?
We mix so that way the honey is mixed thoroughly throughout the liquid, so when you take a gravity reading, it's going to be accurate. We also mix so that way oxygen is physically pushed into the must. That way, when the yeast are introduced, they have oxygen that will help them build their colony. They want to do that first before they get to work creating alcohol.
Always watch out for the spitting bung. It's just a thing. I'm sorry. I know the comment section's going to go crazy with that, but it just does, okay? Something else to not worry about in primary is headspace. I could leave it right here and it would be fine, except that there's too much honey in there for that. So we want to put enough water in to bring that gravity down to about 1.100, but not too much that we get up into the airlock and out of the neck of the tube and stuff. So that'll make more sense in a little while. Did I say 1.000? I meant 1.100. Okay, let me explain what I meant by that, because I think I confused a couple hundred people just now.
Confuse me.
All right. If I left the water level here, we put in enough honey that in a gallon would be around 1.100. I know I said 1.000. You know, there's no script. We're just doing this thing, you know? We're really making mead here. Anyway, so if I had done that, it would probably be almost double that, 1.200, which likely wouldn't ferment, and even if it started, it probably wouldn't finish, and it wouldn't finish well. It might produce off flavors, more fusels. It's just bad, okay? So I want to make sure that I put enough water in that I get to the gravity level that I'm looking for, which is about 1.100. So essentially, I'm diluting the honey right now. If you have a fermenter like this, which I think this was actually an apple juice container at one time, they have 1 gallon raised letters on the side. If you go to about halfway up the G, like where that crossbar is, that's roughly 1 gallon. We actually have a video where we explain that, like right in there. So that, to me, that works just fine. And we have our yeast, a couple bubbles in there. I didn't give it as long as Go Firm calls for, but we did give it like 10 minutes, maybe 15 at this point.
We're very impatient people, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's all going in there.
They should be happy.
Just gonna mix it up. This is why I love this cup. Finally found them on Amazon. Got 2. We'll have links. You can get your own too. It's so much more fun than the other way. I don't know if you've ever watched any of our other videos, you'll see what I'm talking about, the recent ones. This is so much better. But anyway, so here we go. And do I trust myself this time? Heck with it. Look at that. Got it all in. All right. Now, I want to just kind of swirl that through. This foam that's here, don't worry about it. That's literally just from mixing. It's just air in the honey. It'll break down. Something I want to do, though, we're going to take 2 different kinds of readings. The first one is going to be pH. I want to figure out the acidity level of this to see if it needs any adjustment. Yeast has a range that it likes to work in, and generally speaking, 4.0 pH is approved by almost all yeast. That's the easiest way to go. They all have their own ranges, but yeah, 4.0 is pretty much generally accepted. Whoa! And we're a little higher than that.
We're super green.
Yep. Okay, so it's looking like it's around 4.5 to 5. We need it to be just a little bit more acidic than that. So I am going to be adding some acid blend. If you wanted to, you could just add like, half a teaspoon of lemon juice or something like that. But acid blend is kind of our go-to.
Want to just do a fourth of a teaspoon?
I'm going to do a fourth of a teaspoon, yeah. Generally speaking, when we make this adjustment, I use half teaspoon measures and then we get finer and finer. But we're so close that I'm just going to use probably not even a full quarter teaspoon. 2/3 of a quarter teaspoon, just a little bit, because if it's between 4.5 and 5.5, I want it to be closer to 4, but I don't want to overshoot it and then have to, you don't want to play that game. You want to get it close. So I'm going to add a little bit. I can always add more, but once it's in there, I can't take it away. I'm going to mix that up. The reason that we want to adjust pH, 2 reasons. If it's too low, yeast won't like it, they won't ferment, okay? Because a lower pH is more acidic, and that's kind of like wines and meads. When they're done, they're usually lower because fermentation is an acidifying process. It actually makes the pH go down as it ferments, which ends up working like a preservative in the long term. But in the beginning, you want it to be just in the right range for them to start, and if it's too high, well, there's botulism, okay? I don't want to scare anybody because it's rare, it's not normal, it's not typical, but botulism has been known to have spores in honey from time to time. So if there were spores in the honey is acidified enough that it's not going to affect it, they can't survive, they can't do anything. But once you dilute it, and you go past 4.6 pH, which is the magic number for botulism, you can activate botulism spores if they were present. But just don't want to scare anybody, but it's good practice to keep it below there.
That's better safe than sorry.
Exactly. That's all that is. Plus, the yeast like it better anyway. At least that's what they tell me. People, not the yeast. Boy, if yeast could talk, wouldn't it be cool to be the yeast whisperer and know exactly what the yeast need?
What is it that you want?
All right, so now, yeah, that's spot on, 4.0.
Beautiful.
Fantastic.
All right, so we need to take a note.
I do. I used 2/3 of a quarter teaspoon. I'm gonna read this note later and go, What? How many tastings did we do that day? The other reading is actually a specific gravity reading, and this just gives us our starting point to know, did we overpower the yeast or are we going to be just fine? Now, 71B is an interesting yeast for us. It's supposed to be somewhere like 13 or 14% alcohol tolerance. We've had it go to 17. So I'm not overly concerned with its alcohol tolerance because, as I always say, yeast can't read. They don't know they're supposed to stop at 13 or 14%. And we gave this pretty good nutrition. We gave it, the Go Firm and Fermento. So it's probably going to do everything it can do, which means go dry. And that's what we want it to do. So I'm hoping this is somewhere around 1.100. Let's find out. Well, couldn't ask for better than that. 1.100. Now, let me explain what that means. Whenever you try to calculate your ABV, it's always an estimation. We've learned this time and time again that if you're within 1 or 2 points, you're close enough. I wanted to show them something on that, or talk about something on it. I sanitized this. That's why I could pour it back in. Some people don't do that. We're not some people. But anyway, if you look at most triple scale hydrometers, if I go to that 1.100 mark and then I turn it to the potential alcohol, I see that says about 13%, which is exactly what I was hoping for. Now that 13 means anywhere from like, say, 12 to 14 or so, but that's still within the range of what the yeast is meant to do. So that means this has the potential to run dry. Running dry just means it uses up most of all the sugars. Not all of them, you're never going to get them all out, but most of the sugars. And at that point, we go on to the next phase. But right now, what do we need to do?
We need to bung an airlock.
We do. Something about bungs and airlocks. They usually, when you bring them out of the star sand, are wet. If you dry it off with anything, well, what did you just do? You just ruined the idea of sanitation, right? But I found out that paper towels are actually sanitary because of the process in which they're made. So, to make it stay in there and not pop out and not have to dry it unconventionally, I'm going to dry out the inside of the fermenter. And then I'm going to dry off the bottom of the bung. If you've ever seen us use rubber bands, this is why we use rubber bands, because we couldn't tie it off and it just popped out all the time. And I think our fermenters are all just a little bit different, and we have a couple of different size bungs. You know, the troubles of being a home brewer, right? But anyway, watch this.
Ta-da!
And it's still sanitized. That's the important thing to remember there. Now, this is no longer sanitized. So, what are we going to do with this now?
We're going to let it sit.
In the fermentation. But first, we're going to probably put it on like a cookie tray with a little bit of lip, just in case this gets a little overactive, foams up, goes up and out the airlock overnight while we're sleeping. It doesn't end up all over our kitchen. It ends up in a tray. Which, if that does happen, all you got to do is just remove your airlock, clean it out, replace the sanitizer fluid, or put in like a spirit or something like that, you know, like Scoresby Scotch. If you use water, it works, but just remember, bugs can actually climb through water and still survive, but they're not as likely to survive through Scoresby Scotch or sanitizer fluid. We're going to watch this ferment, and in a couple of weeks, probably, once it starts to slow down, we'll be back to show you the next step. It's been 2 weeks.
And I have my book out on the table for reasons.
Because that's like our Bible. We keep all of our notes in
all
there.
of my information, not just the notes for this particular brew, but for everything. And this is doing something that basically everything we've been fermenting the last week or 3 has been doing.
Going really slow.
It's going super slow. It's still going. There's bubbles. It's bubbling. There's little bubbles.
I was getting ready to take a reading on it, and we might anyway, but let me show you what this looks like. I'm pretty sure you can see it from here. All those little tiny bubbles coming up the side, that is a sure sign of fermentation. More so than an airlock bubbling or anything like that. It is a sure sign of fermentation. And that's why at first I was like, oh yeah, let's take a reading on this. And then I realized maybe it's nowhere near. But you know what? Since we have it here, I'm curious, how far along is it? Because we've had others that after this amount of time really weren't very far along. So I'm actually quite curious.
But because we've been taking a bunch of readings and I don't really know, I'm going to sanitize all this stuff just to be sure.
Pretty sure you just did.
I think I just did, but I want to be extra sure because I don't want any contamination.
It's not clear in any way, which means it's nowhere near done. It's at 1.054. Now, it's very bubbly, so I'm going to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, but 1.054...
Oh, I have it. Sorry.
She stole my pen.
I stole your pen.
I have a flag on my pen.
I still steal it.
And she steals it. I think the flag makes her steal it.
Oh, that's the good one.
So that 1.054 doesn't mean a whole lot other than it's a reference point. When we read this again, we want it to go down because it really should. And I think this may take a little while because we seem to be having that problem lately, and it doesn't matter the yeast type or anything. I think it's just a little cooler. So those few degrees in temperature change make a difference. And we say that a lot. Environment matters when it comes to fermentation.
I mean, we're in a climate-controlled environment, so I'm shocked that the little bit of adjustment would cause this much.
Yeah, but I've been making it cooler at night.
It's your fault.
Okay, so before you put that on there, I want to swirl this up. Now, swirling just means I'm making a vortex, I'm degassing it, I'm cleaning off a little bit of the stuff that's stuck on at the top, maybe get that back in there, and I'm getting that lees cake all back up in suspension. So if there's anything living in there or anything that can be used by the living things in there as nutrient.
Yeast and nutrient.
Yep, and proteins that fell out and whatnot, vitamins, whatever you name it. They're cannibals, they'll eat each other.
Yep.
I want to get all that back up and give it a chance to get working again because that's not a lot of gravity used up in 2 weeks.
It's got quite a ways to go.
Let's put it this way. We've had 1.100 gravity reading, starting gravity brews go to dry in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's a little surprising, but it's okay. But as you can see, quite a bit of gas in there. But now I got everything kind of going. Yeah, we'll put the airlock back on, put our note back on, stick it back in the fermentation, see you in a week. All right, so last we left this was a week ago, and it was 1.054, and I was pretty disappointed.
It bubbled.
But that is still going. And there are a couple of fruit flies in that airlock too, which means the airlock is working.
Thank you, airlock, for doing your job.
Just glad you didn't name it. But I'm going to take another reading on this because I want to see how far it's progressing. Looking at it, there's bubbles coming up the side. It's going crazy. It's still working. Okay, so this is not done. And this is why we want to show this, just because too many times people say, oh, you waited 16 days and then racked it. I'm going to do that same thing.
Don't.
Well, not always.
Pay
it doesn't
attention
always
to your
happen.
surroundings.
Yeah. This is why readings are important. And when it kind of upsets me when I hear somebody say that I don't use readings, I just, after 15 days, I rack it. I think you're doing yourself a disservice. Now, if you wait 6 months, yeah, you probably don't need to bother with readings, because at that point, if it's not finished, it's not gonna. But in this case, it's still not finished. I'm gonna see if I can degas this just a tiny bit. It is most definitely still working. That's looking like 1.038 to me. So it actually went down like another 16 points in just a week. So, all right, that's promising. We've been experiencing this a lot lately. And also, coincidentally, a lot of people have been asking me, how come my mead has been going for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks? I think it's colder.
Yeah.
It's that time of year.
If you live in the northern hemisphere, it's wintertime for you right now if you're watching this when we're actually recording this.
And we get this every year about this time. People start, oh, why is my mead taking so much longer? It's because it's colder. You know, if your house is even 4 or 5 degrees colder, that's enough to slow it down. Our house, I know, is colder because we've been having 50s overnight, which I know doesn't sound cold to most people, but for Florida, it is. Just a month ago, we were getting 70 overnight. Now it's dropping down to 50. I've been putting the heat on to keep the house around 70. So instead of having that 74 to 75 degree temperature, we're getting more like 68 to 70. That's enough to slow these things down. So that's what happens. It's okay. It's all part of the process. It's all good. Don't freak out.
Don't panic. Just know where your towel is.
Exactly. We're going to put this back in the fermentation. See you in a couple weeks. Okay, it's been a couple of weeks. And, well, let me just show you what's going on here.
So watch here. Right.
You get the idea.
There you go. There's also some fruit flies in there, which means our airlock is doing its job. But if you scroll on down here, can you see these little guys? These little tiny, tiny bubbles that are coming up the edge and making this bubble layer here at the top.
Yep, that means it's probably not done yet. But I want to show you something else too. If you look inside, you can see there's like some floating yeast in there. That is, I mean, I like to call it calm yeast. It's probably not necessarily even a correct term, but a lot of people get freaked out when they see bubbles like that. It is not an infection of any kind. It's not a Brett infection. Brett looks very, very different than that. I'm trying to get you a good angle of it. It's basically just like thick bubbles. Think of it that way. It's not harming anything. It's actually quite normal. It happens a lot. As we move down, though,
We got a lot of yeast going on down here at the bottom.
kind of stuck to the sides. Like you can see right there's a little bit of a break in it. It's like stuck to the sides and all over the place. It's a little bit of an unusual fermentation, but still nothing that makes me go, oh no, this is bad, we have to throw it out. Nothing like that at all.
However, it's taken a long, long time because
And I would like to say this is the only one that's done that, but it's not. We have a whole bunch.
we seem to go through phases like that too. I think it's seasonal.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be somewhat seasonal. So we're going to take a reading on it. By that I mean a specific gravity reading using a hydrometer. The purpose is to know, is it done fermenting? Because had we not taken any readings, we would have thought, oh, yep, this is done, good to go, and move on. And we could have had problems down the line, such as, it could start up fermenting again at any time if it wasn't fermenting and cause a bottle bomb. It could explode. It could cause all sorts of issues. So we don't want that. All right. When last we left it, it was at 1.038. Today, it went down some. Looks like 1.022. So it's going in the right direction.
But that's still odd.
Yep, it is still odd. It's just taking a while. So you know what we're going to do? Do you know what we're going to do?
Gonna pour that back in there.
Pour this right back in, and we're going to let it keep going. If this had actually stopped, then I would worry about it. But it's still going, so I'm just going to let it keep going.
I am going to take this airlock over to the sink and clean it out really good and then refill it with our properly diluted star sand solution and put it back on here because I just don't like those dead fruit flies flying around there. It's
Fair
just
enough.
aesthetics, right?
And then it's going to go back in the fermentation for another week, and we'll see you at that point with another reading. Okay, it's been 5 more days, and you know what? I'm getting impatient, and that's not a great thing to be as a brewer. But here's something we know. We are going to move forward with this because we're going to add the stuff that makes it Dragon Blood, the berries. But it's still actually fermenting. I can see little tiny bubbles coming up the sides, and the airlock is still going.
And it's not clear. It's showing all the signs of not being done, and we're saying, you know what?
Too bad.
Too bad.
So what we're going to do, though, is I'm going to take a reading on it, and we're going to see where it's at now. And then we're going to do all the other stuff. So just kind of bear with me for a moment here. It looks like 1.018, which is fine because it just doesn't matter. And here's why. We're going to be putting it into a bucket. Now,
there's more star sand.
Okay, you rinsed all the star sand out. So I'm just going to pour the sample into there, and we're going to rack it into that bucket.
Space is the final frontier.
Yeah,
And one we
never
have
enough.
none of.
You know, the frame of a camera is only so large, so
The frame of our house is only so
this
large.
is true too. Now, while we're getting ready to siphon this, there's a couple things I wanted to talk about. We had written down a procedure for this, how we were going to do it. And that procedure was to pasteurize the mead at this point, and then pasteurize the fruit separately, and then add them to the mead. And we started thinking about that, saying, well, in order to do that, I'd probably have to add liquid to the berries, which would then be...
I have a question for you before we put that in there.
What?
Do you want to put the berries in first?
I don't think it matters, but
Well,
we can.
there's the splash zones.
Oh, the splash zone. She has a point. The idea was that we wanted to make sure that the berries were pasteurized as well as the mead before we added the berries so as to not have any further fermentation. And I thought, why do we care if it ferments more?
Well, one of the reasons why we wanted to pasteurize the berries is to prevent any infection. They're frozen,
Right.
so the likelihood is slim to none. But then we thought,
And we thought, what?
you gotta thwack your packet on all the stuff,
Yeah,
even your berries.
yeah, this is crazy. They're like all stuck inside it. And look at that.
That's a mess.
There's a ton of berries in there.
In your home.
Beat the heck out of the bag. That's the next evolution of thwack your packet. Beat the hell out of the bag. We wanted to
Right.
basically sanitize the fruit. And now this is frozen fruit that's been frozen for quite some time.
Also, what are we about to put on top of it?
Alcohol, and something like 9 or 10% alcohol, which in and of itself should be a preservative. So any wild yeast or any infection that could happen probably won't. And I know a lot of people have done it this way for eons. They use frozen fruit, they just add it right to the mead, and it's no problem. You can even do it in the beginning. Now, in the beginning of fermentation, before fermentation starts, I actually prefer to pasteurize some of the water with the fruit. That way, you're pretty much assured. But at this point, should be totally fine to add frozen fruit to this mead. Now, I know what you're saying, but the temperature. But I don't care if it ferments anymore at this point. I don't really want it to. If it does, it does, but I'm not overly concerned with it. That's why I don't care that we're adding frozen fruit directly to this. If nothing else, it'll cold crash it slightly and maybe shock the yeast into not fermenting anymore.
Another reason we really don't care is because we know this is going to be under airlock. So if it does ferment, oh well, we got more alcohol, but we don't have to worry about a safety issue because the airlock is going to let out any pressure from the built-up gases.
Now, one thing that this does is this reading of 1.018 that we just got is almost meaningless at this point, other than telling us that this wasn't actually done fermenting yet. So adding it into this berries with all the juices and things like that, it's going to throw it completely off. So we're going to let this sit for a couple of weeks before we take the next reading on it, just so that we have a new baseline to go off to see if it's actually finished. But that's for later on in the video. Now, I put the auto siphon all the way to the bottom of the fermenter. We hear a lot of people saying that, oh, I can't use an auto siphon, or they don't work because I just get gunk or air all the time. Well, that's probably because you're going all the way to the bottom or letting air get in before it starts. Either one of those two will cause problems. Now, I went all the way to the bottom on this because, well, it might re-ferment anyway. There's going to be plenty of stuff falling out from the fruit, so a little bit of extra gunk doesn't matter. But that way I don't lose any product in the process.
You just got to make sure that
Yep,
you
and
pay
you don't
attention.
do what I'm doing right now. See, that's bad, except that it's nearing the end of what it's going to suck up. So that's all we're going to get out of this. That's all right. We only lost about that much in the bottom of the fermenter. That's normal. It's okay. You know what? I'm going to actually do something that I don't generally recommend.
When you're racking, you have to pay attention to your hose. Your hose is very important. And if there's a little bit of liquid in your hose, see like right there, you're going to have to let it travel with gravity down into your bucket. And when you make a new kink, there might be a new bunch of liquid stuck in that kink. So pay attention to your hose.
All right. I'm going to do something that I don't generally recommend doing. But see that liquid in the bottom there? There's no reason to waste that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to tip this a little bit to the side, and I'm going to pour it in very carefully. And some people may freak out thinking I'm oxidizing the heck out of it. Not really.
The reason why you tip it to your side is that if you can pour it along the side, the inside of your vessel, then you're not going to splash, and therefore you'll limit
oxygenation.
Thank you.
Or oxidation, however you want to say it. Now, because there's a little gauge on the side here, we can see that we have just under 1.5 gallons, which could potentially be an oxidation problem. A lot of people would freak out that there's that much air on top. I'm not overly worried because I know it's still fermenting, and because it's still fermenting, it's still producing CO2, which means it's filling that with CO2.
All right, now you heard that initial snap and the
snap, crackle, and pop.
Yeah. So you push until you get that initial snap, and then you go all the way around and make sure that you're nice and sealed, and you're good to go.
Somebody said this in the comments, because if it doesn't snap, your seal is crap. It just occurred to me, we might not have actually gone over what we added to this. We added mixed berries, which is 3 pounds of blueberries, blackberries, and raspberries. They are the Dragon Blood mix. Don't ask me why they call it a Dragon Blood. I don't really know. I didn't name it. We're just going along with it.
The triple berry blend.
Yeah, it's just triple berry blend mead, basically.
We named it Dragon Blood, babe.
We did?
Yeah, we did.
Because I've seen it online many times.
Yeah, we did it like years and years and years ago. This is a redo.
Oh, so you mean the other people that are using triple berry mead and calling it Dragon Blood? Or I don't want to say it.
I'm not going to say it.
Anyway, but yeah, it is basically those 3 berries. We use 3 pounds, and you could do it in primary, but I like doing it in secondary because that way we get more of the fruity flavor from it without so much of the fermentation aspect, because that's what we really want, is those fresh, fruity berry flavors in this mead.
Now, you could do this brew multiple ways. You can put them at the beginning and the end. You can put them just in the beginning. You can put them just in the end. It's up to you.
Right.
But if you want to follow a recipe and you're new to the brewing experience, which I highly suggest you follow a recipe.
Do it how we did it.
Do it how we did it.
Yep. So we're going to let this sit for probably 2 to 3 weeks. That seems to be the preferred amount of time to get the maximum extraction from fruit. Any longer, and we might start risking some mold issues. Any shorter, and we might not get as much out of the fruit as we want. So we'll see in a couple of weeks. Okay, so it's been about 2 more weeks, and it's time to move forward with this. So we're going to remove the airlock. I'm going to open it up. We're going to take a look inside. All right, as we open it up, we want to take a look at the fruit. We're looking for mold, eyeballs, teeth, that sort of thing. I'm joking, but I'm not. We're doing an optical and an olfactory inspection. It smells like fruit and it smells like mead. So I think we did well. We're just making sure that there's no mold. If there was mold, sorry, the whole batch is gone. But since they're done, we can move on to racking. Racking. I'm going to leave the cap on our auto siphon. Derek is going to put the destination in her lap. I'm going to put this about halfway into the bucket and just get it started. Whoa, look at that color.
That's a lovely color.
That is gorgeous. That's what we like. That's why we call it Dragon Blood. All right, so after racking, we ended up with exactly 128 ounces. I love it when a plan comes together. That almost never happens, but that's why we like to use a bucket or a larger vessel when we're going to be adding fruit, and then we can just rack down to the appropriate size. All right, on the smell, it's fruit, fruit, and fruit. Seriously fruity.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. We made this once before, and I was never truly happy with it.
I'm getting a little bit of floral.
You're supposed to taste it.
Oh, I taste. Is this a rule now?
Ladies first.
Okay.
I've been yelled at far too many times when I take the taste first. I generally have her taste everything first, but usually the first taste is kind of the worst one. So sometimes I save her the trouble of having to do it. It's not that I'm not being chivalrous or gentlemanly.
It's almost got an effervescence in the sensation in the mouth right now.
Well, it might still be a little gassy.
But are you getting that?
No.
Oh, it's just a Jerica thing then.
I did, however, get quite a bit of a fruit flavor, which is lovely.
Yeah.
I think it's dry. It's dry. but I would like it to be sweeter. Wait a minute.
Do you want to take a gravity reading at this point to see where we're at?
It was at 1.018, and then we added mixed berries. Yeah, I think we need to take a gravity reading right now
For
because
science.
I have a feeling this may have fermented further.
Which is quite possible.
Now, remember, it was 1.018, then we added berries. So if those berries exuded any sugars and some of it was converted to alcohol, well, we're not necessarily going to know how much it did or anything like that. I'm not going to worry about it. There's not that much sugar in fruit like this.
We're not really going to use this reading for anything other than
reference.
It's not going to be part of the equation.
It definitely fermented further. Right now, it is at 1.000.
Wow. All right.
So it actually went down 18 points plus whatever the berries themselves added.
Right.
Okay, I just want to point out, that's an unusual condition, but in our case, it wasn't a bad thing because we had it under airlock the entire time.
Right.
So no harm could come to it.
Also, we didn't stick to our normal protocol where we take a reading and then wait a week and then take another reading. If they match, we know it's done. Because we knew we wanted to continue forth with this.
That's true.
So
it was still going down.
It was still going down.
54, 38, 22, 18, and now it's 0.
Right. So as Brian stressed, as long as you have it under airlock, this isn't necessarily an issue. It can continue ferment, and that's fine. When it is an issue is if you stop at that point and go to bottle and you don't have it under airlock and you don't pasteurize or stabilize in any method. That's when, if it's continuing to ferment in your bottle, you are more than likely going to have a bottle bomb because the pressure is going to build up from the gases created during the fermentation process. Kablamo.
Just for reference, this is about 13% ABV.
Yeah. So
give or take.
The fermentation process that continued did not cause any issues for the flavor profile of this. I actually enjoyed a lot.
Happy accident is basically what this is. But it does need some more honey.
But it was also, we knew the possibility was there when we did that.
A way to prevent that, if you wanted to, would be to take the whole must, pasteurize it, and then let it sit for a couple weeks to extract. It's probably going to extract a little quicker, so you might not even need a couple weeks. That way, you won't make more alcohol. But in this case, it didn't really matter making more alcohol. So.
But because we took that gravity reading, now we'll give you a better baseline of how much.
Yeah, because I probably would have been shocked if we only sweetened it to 1010 and go, wait a minute, why is that lower?
How do we reverse sweet?
Yeah. I added a pretty significant amount because I knew it needed it. Berries tend to need sweetness to taste right, in my opinion. I also need something to stir it with.
Do you need the spattle?
I need the spattle. In case you were wondering what the spattle was, this is the spattle. It's a spoon, it's a paddle, it's both. You can get yours in the description below. Yes, it is known as the spattle on Amazon. I named it.
He's so proud. You know?
Well, wouldn't you be? I mean, think about it. I named something that's on Amazon.
The small victories that make us happy.
I'm betting you less than 1% of the population ever gets to name something on Amazon. A lot less than 1%. Yet we've named 2 things that were on Amazon.
I know.
Turbos used to be on Amazon too.
It used to be if you typed in the red bucket of sanitization,
it found turbos.
It would find turbos.
And then they sold out.
Yeah.
Like badly, and they haven't got them back.
Yeah.
So we're sorry. One of these days, we might just have to retire turbos and get a new turbos.
Or we can direct contact with company and
Possibly.
I don't know.
Now, when you add sweetener like we did, you want to stir it in real good. We are doing the sweeten to taste method rather than the let me add exactly 8 ounces and hope that this is enough. I don't like that method. I'd much rather do it this way. Now, some people that are doing that method, just so you know, have already tested and they needed 8 ounces. I'm not really throwing it away. I'm just saying in this method, you can get it to your taste rather than someone else's is kind of the point.
And if you're really good at keeping notes, then if you want to replicate this again, you will know exactly how much to do and go straight from there without having to do the step-by-step process.
But in reality, the volume method doesn't work as well, or it's not as efficient or consistent because we happen to have exactly 128 ounces and then we tasted 2. But what if you had 120 or 116 or 110 or 90 and then you tasted a couple?
Oh, yeah.
Now you're totally changing it if you add the exact same quantity or volume of honey. That's why we sweeten until we like it, and then we give you our specific gravity reading so that you can replicate that in any batch size that you happen to have. And the reason you want to make sure it's mixed through is because otherwise you're not getting a valid reading. Yeah, this is a 3-pound package. There was like that much in it, so probably 1/6 of a pound left in here. Still not a lot of honey character on the smell, but it's better on the taste.
Do you want more?
I definitely want more.
Okay.
There's some other things missing that I'll get to in a moment. It's missing tannins as well.
Okay.
It needs more of a tannic aspect. And that's hard to replicate just instantly. So we're going to add some wine tannin to this. Another way to do it would be to use oak chips or oak blocks or chunks or something like that, or one of the little novelty gallon barrels if you wanted to do it that way too. But that's going to take a lot longer, and it's going to add vanillins and things like that. So it's going to alter the flavors. It is an option. I don't want any of that. I actually just want the tannic aspect, the little bit of a mouth pucker, mouth feel. Feels a little thin. People ask all the time, what do tannins do? Right now, it tastes slightly watery, okay? Now, adding more honey is going to add viscosity to it as well. It'll give a little bit more mouthfeel. But I feel like it needs... The easiest way to describe it is, it goes in and out really, really quick, and you don't even notice it's there. Tannins will actually make it kind of stick in your mouth a little bit, give you a little bit more lasting power on the flavors.
Like if you drink of a cup of straight black tea and you got that.
Yeah, that mouth pucker, that's strong tannins. We want a little bit of that effect. That tends to make sweet things stick around a little longer without just tasting sickly sweet. I know we talked about it a little bit, but the whole Dragon Blood Mead concept, mixed berry, making Dragon Blood Mead. I know it's made up. I don't think we invented it. I think someone else did, but it just seems like a strange combo for Dragon Blood to me.
I don't recall.
I know others have done it.
I think we were on the Viking blood and the other blood.
I could have sworn I got the idea from somewhere else though. Maybe not. Maybe I made it up. It is possible.
I think we saw the mixed berries at Costco and we're like, oh, you can make a mead out of that. What are we going to call it? Oh, Dragon Blood.
Really? And we started a trend and everybody else now names it that? I don't know about that. I don't know.
Who knows? And it doesn't really matter, honestly.
We also did the Dragon something.
Dragon Breath.
Dragon Breath.
That was capsicum ale.
Yep. That was basically this with, I think, jalapenos in it, which sounds really good too, actually. Maybe we'll have to revisit that one too. This is coming out really nice, and I think with some heat from capsicums in it, it would actually be really nice. But it's not really your thing, though, is it? No, I like those. I actually think the sweetness is right, though.
Okay.
Let's add a little bit of wine tannin.
Okay.
It's behind you.
It's right there. I already got it out.
Oh, she got it out. It says 1/4 to a half, but I can tell you right now, this needs a half. Anytime we've ever used it before, I've normally done a 1/2 teaspoon. Whoa. Shook it up a little. Some smoke coming out. It's hot stuff.
It's a powder, so don't shake it.
I'm trying to do a very leveled 1/2 teaspoon. It's going to clump and not mix nicely. Don't worry about it. It'll eventually dissolve and do its thing. It's essence of oak. So it's like ground up oak, really. So it's sort of doing the same thing as oaking, except much, much, much faster. So you're not going to get much of the vanillins and the caramel type notes from it. Instead, you're just going to get the tannic aspect from it for the most part. That's the idea. One very important thing that we're going to say at this point, this will need to be pasteurized. If you do not pasteurize, there is a strong potential this could ferment further. If you don't want to pasteurize, even though it's very safe, we've shown it in many videos, we have a video on exactly how we do it. There are chemical ways of doing it. We never, ever do it that way. I've never actually used them, so I can't help with that exact aspect of it. However,
it's time to take a gravity reading.
Yeah, we're not going to taste it now because the tannic aspect takes time to develop, so not really going to change all that much right now. 1.014.
So at this point,
we're going to rack it to a narrow mouth 1 gallon.
Yep.
We're going to pasteurize it. That means we're going to put it into water. We're going to use an immersion circulator. We're going to bring the temperature of internal of the container, not the water, the actual inside the fermenter, the actual wine, up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll put the Celsius right here. We're going to hold it there for 22 minutes. And at that point, we remove it, put it on something like wood or rubber that's insulated so that it won't have thermal shock and possibly crack, and let it come to room temperature. We do this with the airlock on. I know in the video I might have showed with the airlock off. We actually leave the airlock on. What I usually do though is after I take it out, I just crack the airlock to release any back suction that might be happening or anything like that. And every
Because-
once in a while, check on it.
At that point, it'll be a heated beverage that's going to be cooling back down, and the temperature change of hot to cold will create a reverse suction in your airlock, and you don't want that.
And then this is going to sit for probably a week, and we'll be back at that point to give you our tasting and judgment. But before we do that, someone asked if we could start taking final pH readings, and I forgot because, we never did it before. So I'm going to start doing that. And
Do you need the baster back?
I do not. I'm just going to take a drip off of the
it's
thing
metal.
right here. Yeah, I just need like a drop or two. So now the idea behind the final pH is this is more of a preservation pH. Someone asked, they said that after fermentation, they were down to like a 2.6 or 2.7 pH, and they were asking, should they raise that? No, absolutely not. You only want to do that for fermentation's sake. After that, anything below that 3 range is really good for preservation because remember, yeast don't like to work in that low range. Neither does botulism, neither do bacteria, neither does most anything that would actually ruin your brew. So you don't want to raise that, you want to keep it. But right now, this is sitting at, it looks like somewhere between 2.5 and 3. So I'm going to call it like 2.7 or so pH. What that means is like even wineries, they will sometimes add acid to their wines to lower that pH to get it down to the range that ours went to naturally. Because the fermentation process is a natural acidifier. It will increase the acidity or lower the pH. By the way, this is a confusing thing. I get it confused often too. A lower number for pH means higher acidity. A higher number for pH means lower acidity.
We will see you in a week after we did all the things Brian told you we're going to do.
All right, so this has been sitting for about a week. It is time to taste it and give it a score. See how we did. Now, this is a redo. So we've done this one once before. We don't have any of the old one left, or else I would totally want to compare them side by side.
Which would be unfair because we made that years ago.
Yep.
Not a year, but years.
Yeah, multiple years. I think this one's better anyway.
Yeah.
I didn't really like the old one that much. It was okay, but we've learned a lot. Lots changed. Better methods, better materials, better procedures, better palettes, all kinds of things. But wow, let's talk about color. This is why we call it Dragon Blood. I hope you can see this. This stuff is beautifully ruby red, and it's just like this dark blood color, but it's perfectly clear.
It's a fantastic color.
Yeah,
I'm really
I
happy.
mean, you can see right through it. It's just, we have a thing about red meads.
We
though.
do,
We
but
really
this one's
do.
like a dark red.
Yeah,
which-
well, it's blood. It's dragon's blood, which I don't know what color dragon's blood actually is, but this one's red.
Oh, stick your nose in there.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Honey and berry. It's like you have a big bowl of berries
It's like
and you just poured honey over the top of it.
gobbler or something.
Why am I getting vanilla?
I don't know. Why are we getting vanilla? Because I'm getting vanilla too.
Maybe it's just the way it went. Because all that's in this is the berries and honey. There's no extra. Though vanilla in this would actually be really nice.
Smells extra. Let's see what it tastes like.
Yeah, it smells amazing. Clink, clink. I don't know what the old one tasted like. This one's good. That is like... We've said this a couple of times now. We tend to make very powerful flavors.
It's a pie in a glass.
This one is just, it punches you in the face with those berries. Like, it's just berry, and then you get honey. It's like, wow, just amazing. There's a nice tartness to it. It's adding, like, the acidity level is just right. We do have a note here. It was 2.7 pH. So this is preservable, which is great. And that goes down as it ferments. But it's got like that lip smacking thing.
Yeah.
There's good tannic
sure
quality.
I'm making really obnoxious noises
all
right
of
now.
the
Sorry.
berry seeds and stems and skins and all that.
They did their job.
They really did do a wonderful thing here.
Because we didn't add additional tannin. No, we didn't.
Nope, this is actually a really, really simple recipe. Because we did it the backwards way, where you make the mead first, and then we added the berries afterwards. The only thing that we did to it for adjustments was we added acid blend, because it was too high of a pH when we first started. That's it. We brought it down to 4.
Yep.
So really, really simple. This would be great as a second mead. After you make a traditional, make this one. It'd be so good. When it comes to scoring, I'm going to save you some time. I'm going to put a card up on the screen. It's going to give you the breakdown of our scores.
Break it on down.
And that way we can talk about flavors more.
Give us a trip, Bri.
Okay. Well, I need more. Okay, as it enters, it's sweet and fruity. Really nice. It's almost like light when it first comes in. And then it starts to fill your mouth and it becomes very like lip smacking, thick, almost viscous in the mouth. And it's not overly sweet. It's only 1.014.
And I think that's why my brain gets triggered to pie.
Yeah.
Because when you cook,
That's
when you
kind
bake
of
a
what's
pie,
coming through.
those cooked juices that get
Yep.
kind of syrupy, that's the
Kind of coming through like that. The honey is really there on like the 1/2 to 3/4 palate. And it's got a good mouthfeel, a little bit of pucker, but not too much. The acids are just right. Like it's light and refreshing is what it is, even though it's actually gets slightly heavier as it goes, but it's still very light. And then goes down nice and quick. Oh, you know what we didn't do? How much alcohol is in this?
dun dun dun.
It started at 1.100. It ended at 1.000. But then we added fruit. Actually, it ended at 1.018. Then we added fruit. And then it ended at 1.000. So the fruit probably fermented a couple of points, but we don't know that. So I'm just going to go with the numbers that we actually have. We used up 100 points times 131.25. And if you're wondering why I'm using that number again, because it's just easier. And honestly, the extra 0.5 point or whatever didn't really matter. And I got tired of answering the question, how come you don't use 131.25 like the rest of the world? So, anyway, so it's about 13%, which means anywhere from like 12 to 14-ish. Probably erring on the lower side. So I'm going to just, I'm just going to say 12.5
All right.
for our own records, which that's still, pretty
Yeah.
reasonably high.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed with this. I like this a lot.
Yes.
Do you need more for your scoring?
I do not. I would like to say that I do for lies, but it would be lies. Lies.
This is the kind of thing that you can drink far too much of
Yes.
because it tastes like fruit juice with a little bit of alcohol in it. It's just really good. The honey comes through though too.
Yeah.
It is berries and honey with a little bit of alcohol.
It's berry pie in a glass.
I am getting just an ever so slight bitterness on the exhale,
Yeah.
but it's not powerful.
It's not pronounced at all.
barely there.
No. All right.
Yeah, it's almost
about
a
numbers.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure where to go. All right, you know what? I'm doing it. I know what I'm doing. You ready?
I am ready.
1, 2, 3, 9.5. Yeah. I couldn't go to 10 simply because of that little bit of a bitter note on the back end. I think this is going to age so beautifully, though.
Yep.
And I don't even know how it could improve that much, but it's just that little bitterness on the end that's bothering me from going to a 10 or an 11.
Yeah.
But if that mellows out and
close.
the slight tartness of it mellows with, wow, this could be a 12 in a year. You never know. We might have to change the scale.
See you in a year.
Yeah. Anyway, make this. Make Dragon's Blood. It was awesome. The second time around was way better. And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching and have a great day.
Bye-bye.